I remember the first time I opened my ESL textbook and saw inventions written at the top, and I thought, what am I supposed to talk about? And how do I make this interesting? So if you're in the same boat, or maybe you just need some new ideas for your ESL lesson, I got you. Here's my entire inventions ESL lesson plan. My name is Megan. I have been an ESL teacher in China for over 10 years, and I am so passionate about helping other teachers create really actionable, interesting lesson plans so that their students can progress on their English journey. Let me share with you my entire inventions ESL lesson plan. You can copy and paste this or adapt it for your students. First, let's start with a warm-up. I always like to start class with a warm-up just because it gets the juices flowing. It gets them speaking in English right from the beginning. The warm-up question is a simple one. It's just, what do you think phones will be like in 2050? Or change that to whatever year you're like, 2075. It's a simple enough question because any student can have at least an idea. There's no right or wrong answer. I usually have found though that if you make it something really far away, like the year 3000, students find it a little bit harder to conceptualize. So just a few years in the future, let them have fun with it. Let them chat with their partner about what they think could happen. This is also a great segue into opening up their creativity because we are talking about inventions today, and spoiler alert, students are going to have to create an invention later on, so I want to get those creative juices flowing. After our warm-up, that's when I usually move into teaching vocabulary and then doing the textbook exercises that we need to do. Grammar exercises, listening exercises, whatever you have in your textbook. If you don't have a textbook, then what I would do is I would just choose a couple of vocabulary words that are going to be suitable for your students' level, teach those few vocabulary words that they're going to need for the rest of the lesson. I've done this lesson before without a textbook, and that's how I do it. After we've warmed up and we've learned the basic information that we need, it's time to start practicing. I'm going to share two different speaking exercises and also show you how you can adapt and expand them as well, depending on how much material you need for your class. The first speaking experience is to travel back in time. So for this one, I tell the students that today is a very special day. There is a new invention, a time machine. With this invention, we can travel back in time. You and your partner are going to have a conversation about this. So one person will be the person who travels back in time, and one person will be from the past. I generally like to choose something that's 200 years in the past. So we're going from the modern day to the 1800s. I tell them, when you travel back in time, you need to have a conversation with the person from the past, and I want you both to describe what your daily life is like. I want the person from the past to ask questions about the future, and I want the person from the future to ask questions about the past. Now, they might need a little bit of help and guidance. No, strike that, take that back. They definitely need a little bit of help and guidance. They definitely need a little bit of help thinking about what has changed between the past and the present. So I just put a couple words on the board behind me. How is transportation different? Someone from the 1800s, they're probably using horses, while someone from today is using a plethora of things. They're using cars and subways and taxis and Ubers and airplanes and everything. I talk about how is education different. In the 1800s, maybe women didn't go to school. Maybe girls didn't go to school. We certainly didn't have online classes. No one had to make PowerPoints during education in the 1800s. How is food different? People from the past are raising their own chickens and eating them for dinner versus today we're going to KFC and getting a Coca-Cola. I usually give a couple of examples just to get them started, and then I throw a few other words on the board as well, just single words, so they can keep getting prompted with new ideas if they need it. How is travel different? How are jobs different? How is society and societal expectations different? How is fashion different? Then if they get stuck in the conversation, they can look at it. At the beginning, take your time, be patient with the students. They usually find it a little bit difficult to jump into this conversation, but once they do, they always have the most fun. My students are always like crying laughing at all the crazy things that are happening. I remember one time these two groups were trying to explain transportation, and so one guy was like pointing at the sky and trying to describe a plane, and he's like, it has wings, it's white, it flies really high in the sky, and the person from the past was like, dude, you are describing a bird. We have these too. And it was so funny. It always is such a fun and interactive activity. A second speaking activity you can do could be a little bit more involved. And this one is to make an invention. Now, this is, of course, to practice their English, but there's a little bit more beyond that. This goal is to have students explain and express their ideas clearly. Can they really conceptualize something and describe it and explain it well enough? Because that is a skill I find a lot of ESL students are lacking. Sure, they can go back and forth in a conversation. Hi, how are you? How are you doing today? But when they have to explain exactly what they think or explain the process of something, they often find it a little bit difficult. So for practice number 2, they have to create an invention. Now, again, to get them thinking and to get them kind of excited, I usually show them some crazy pictures of some interesting inventions. For example, there's one that you can put an umbrella on your shoe so that way your shoes don't get wet during the rain. Or one that's like baby clothes, but it can clean the floor. So while the baby is crawling around on the floor, it will clean the floor. Or fan that will blow on your noodles because your noodles are too hot. It helps cool down the food as you eat it. Crazy inventions. It always makes them feel a little bit more interested, and it also opens up the realm of possibilities. In the past, when I didn't show them these crazy pictures, students felt like they needed to create something truly serious, something that was helpful for society, a true invention that would change the world. But showing them these pictures and just telling them it could be something that is really serious, or it could be something just fun and really silly. It's up to you. Kind of opens up the possibilities for whatever students want to invent. Of course, if students are working by themselves, they're not really speaking English and practicing their spoken English, so have them partner up. Have 2 people working together to create an invention. Tell them their goal is to be able to explain the invention to someone else. That person could be you. Maybe you're walking around and you're talking to the different students and asking them to explain their inventions. Another way you could modify this is you could have a couple of students come to the front of the room and explain their inventions in front of everyone. I've talked about this before in another video about how I don't love always having the students come to the front of the room. For a few reasons. I think it wastes a lot of time. It can put a lot of pressure on students. I talk about that more in a video about how to get your students to talk more, but you could also just have students present their ideas to another group. So if you have these 2 students who created an invention together and these 2 students who created an invention together, have them communicate with each other. You share your idea and you share your idea. If you want to take this a step further, you could, before this sharing time, you could teach students about some speech techniques about pitching or sales techniques. For a lot of my students, I teach at a university. For a lot of my students, they go into jobs that require them to speak in English. A lot of them are in sales or e-commerce. And so learning how to create a hook or how to create a problem and solve the problem for the customer could be quite a valuable skill. When I have higher level students and when I have more time, I usually will go into these techniques about how to pitch something, how to not only explain your ideas, but how to pitch them, how to explain it in a way that people get excited about it, how to sell the idea in a way that people want to invest and they want to join you. So you could, as a bonus activity, first teach some techniques about how to sell or how to pitch. Then have students practice their presentation before they present it in front of the class or before they present it to a partner. Tell the students that their goal is to get someone to invest in their product. Can you get me to believe in your product? Can you get me to see the benefits of your product, the usefulness of your product? Because doing something like this is really transferring the skills that students are learning inside the classroom to the outside world. Not just, can you speak in English? But can you communicate effectively in English? Can you express your ideas in a clear and coherent way? Can you express your ideas in such a way that I believe in you, I want to support you, that I am excited about what you are presenting? Another fun addition to this is after people have presented, have students vote on whether or not they would invest in your company. Whenever I do this, students get very excited about it. They're excited about the idea of a tangible, real life situation goal, and they're usually quite motivated as they try to convince someone else that their idea is valuable, their idea is worth investing in. The last thing we need to do is talk about the homework assignment. I usually use 3 different homework assignments for this inventions lesson. And pro tip, if you want to use one of these for homework, you can easily convert the other 2 into speaking activities. So if you need more to add into your lesson, go ahead and add these in. In my experience though, I teach 90-minute classes, and everything I shared, the warm-up, teaching vocabulary or teaching the textbook, talking about going back to the past, and the inventions, that's more than enough to fill 90 minutes of class time. But if you need a little bit more, convert one of these homework assignments or 2 of these homework assignments or all of the homework assignments into speaking activities. The first and my favorite homework assignment is, what do you think, in your opinion, is the greatest invention in the world? This one's really fun because, again, students have to express their ideas in a clear way. Why do they believe that electricity is the greatest? Why do they believe that it's cell phones? Why do they believe that it's air conditioning? It's also kind of fun because students sometimes will show a little bit of their personality. I've had students give random suggestions, like they think chocolate is the greatest invention in the world, and they have fun describing why they think the world would just be a disaster without chocolate. I usually tell them to write 5 sentences to express their ideas. The second prompt is, how have phones helped or harmed our society? Give students a requirement. They have to write down 5 ideas for both sides. 5 ways that phones have helped and 5 ways that phones have harmed. Now, it's very easy for students to just write down some simple ideas as well, like phones make our life more convenient. But it's harmed us because we spend too much time looking at the screen. It hurts our eyes. So you could also challenge the students to have the most creative ideas. And whoever has the most creative ideas, you'll give them, a shout out in the next class. Or maybe they'll get like a small piece of candy or something if they have the most creative ideas. That kind of encourages students to genuinely think about this rather than just writing down a couple of simple ideas and moving on. Number 3 could be a bullet list type of situation, but I prefer for this to be a little bit more of like an essay format. And that is to compare and contrast one invention from the past to what it's like today. For example, what were cars like in the past and what are they like today? What were phones like in the past and what are they like today? I found that if I keep it vague like this, students like it a little bit more. They have a little bit more flexibility. In the past, I've said something like compare and contrast an invention from 100 years ago to today. But 100 years ago, we didn't have phones. So it left students kind of limited. They had to think about something that existed 100 years ago and also exists today. But students genuinely find this a little bit interesting, and in many cases, they do have to search online as well, which is something I like to do to encourage independent learning. I don't want the students to only be learning when they're in class with me. I don't want them to rely on learning happens in class, learning happens with Megan. I want them to be exploring and learning on their own as well, and having them do this assignment kind of pushes them out of their boundary a little bit. Maybe they don't remember what phones were like when they were first invented. Maybe, and by phone I mean like a cell phone, mobile phone, but you could do a traditional phone, I guess. That would be even bigger difference. But remember, back in the day, cell phones were just the size of bricks. They were huge, and they just had, the buttons that you could touch. Or what were flip phones like, and what was texting like during that time. You can give them a page or a sentence requirement for writing about this, and it's also quite useful from a grammar perspective as well, because students get to practice with comparing and contrasting, not only but also. On the other hand, in addition, they get to practice using those transitions, and maybe that's something that you could reference or teach during the vocabulary and textbook exercises as well. That fits in really well. And that's it. That is the Inventions ESL lesson plan that I use most of the time. To be honest, I do actually have an entirely separate Inventions lesson plan because there have been a few years where I had 2 chapters on inventions in the same book. and I had to come up with something different for the second lesson. If you liked this lesson, you might also be interested in my AI and robots lesson. I'll link to that down below, and I'll have it at the end of the screen as well. And I have a ton of other videos as well about travel, about music, so check all of those out if you're looking for more ideas. Thanks so much for watching. You can always check out the website www.atlasteachingesl.com, and you can check back here for weekly videos. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, leave them in the comments down below. Like and subscribe. That way YouTube will push out this video to more teachers who need inspiration. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time.